There's this comforting belief we all hold on to that when something goes wrong, when things feel unsafe, you can pick up the phone, dial 911, and help will come. But what happens when that help isn't enough? What happens when the danger isn't something they can arrest or explain or even see? Tonight, I have 3 disturbing true stories where the police couldn't help. These aren't urban legends or campfire tales. These are real experiences from people who did what they were supposed to do. They called for help and still found themselves completely alone. So lock your doors, check your windows, and get comfortable, because after hearing these, you might realize that sometimes no one is coming to save you. This happened in late 2018 when I was living in a ground floor apartment just outside of Phoenix. I was 26, working late nights at a small diner, which meant I usually got home around 1 or 2 a.m. It wasn't a bad neighborhood, but it wasn't great either. Cheap rent, thin walls, and neighbors I barely knew. The apartment was a 1-bedroom with a sliding glass door that opened to a tiny patio. Beyond the patio was a shared courtyard with a few trees and some old metal benches. My living room had these vertical blinds that never quite closed all the way. You could always see little slivers of the outside through them. At first, I didn't think anything of it. You get used to the occasional noise when you live near other people, the muffled TV through the wall, footsteps in the courtyard, the distant hum of traffic. But then, sometime in October, I noticed something strange. It was a Tuesday night. I'd just gotten home from work and was sitting on my couch eating leftovers with the TV on low when I felt it, that prickly feeling you get when someone's watching you. I glanced toward the blinds, and for just a second, I thought I saw something. A shape, like someone standing just beyond the glass door. I froze, stared at the blinds. Nothing moved. I told myself it was a trick of the light or maybe a shadow from one of the trees outside. Eventually, I laughed it off. But the next night it happened again, and this time I was sure. I had just turned off the TV to head to bed when I saw a sliver of movement through the gap in the blinds, like a person shifting their weight. My stomach dropped. I crept over, slow and quiet, and peeked through one of the gaps. There was a man standing on my patio. Tall, thin, wearing a dark hoodie with the hood pulled tight around his face. He was just standing there, not knocking, not saying a word. Just staring directly at the glass door. I jumped back so fast I almost tripped. My heart was pounding in my throat. I grabbed my phone, ducked into the hallway, and called 911. The dispatcher was calm, asked for my address, asked if the man had tried to enter. I said no, but he was definitely on my property. She said an officer would be sent out and told me to stay inside. I waited, 5 minutes, 10. Finally, I heard a car pull up. Red and blue lights flashed through the blinds. I opened the door to the hallway and peeked out. 2 officers were in the courtyard, shining flashlights around. One of them came to my door and I explained what happened, voice shaking. They looked around, checked the patio, and told me there was no one there now. One officer said, and I'll never forget this, probably just a drunk cutting through, "Lock your doors and try to get some sleep." Then they left. I didn't sleep, not that night. Every sound made me jump. But by morning, I started convincing myself they were right. Maybe it was a drunk guy or a neighbor's guest who got lost. Then the notes started. The first one was 3 days later. I came home from work and there was a folded piece of lined paper wedged in the frame of my sliding glass door. I opened it. 4 words written in tiny, cramped letters. "I like your lights." That was it, no name. No explanation. I called the police again. They sent someone out, took the note, wrote a report, but said unless the guy threatened me or tried to break in, there wasn't much they could do. "Keep your blinds closed," they said. "Install a camera if you're worried." So I did. I bought a cheap Wi-Fi camera the next day and set it up facing the patio. That night, I stayed up late watching the feed on my phone. Nothing happened until 2:41 a.m. The motion alert pinged, and when I opened the app, my stomach turned to ice. There he was again. Same hoodie, same blank stance. He walked up to the glass door slowly, almost like he was trying not to make noise. Then he crouched down. For a full minute, he just crouched there, head tilted, staring inside like he was studying something. And then this is what made me almost drop my phone. He leaned in close to the glass and waved at the camera. I called the police, shaking so hard I could barely hold the phone. When they arrived, he was gone again. I showed them the footage. They admitted, yeah, that's creepy as hell. But again, they said unless he broke in, there wasn't enough for an arrest. They offered to increase patrols in the area, but that was it. That night, I dragged a dresser in front of the glass door. I barely slept. When the sun came up, I decided I couldn't stay there anymore. I called my landlord and said I was breaking the lease. I didn't care about losing the deposit. I just needed out. The last day I was there, I was packing boxes when I went to check the camera one last time before unplugging it. There was a new clip from the night before. The man had come back. This time, he had a piece of paper pressed against the glass. Written in those same tiny letters were 6 words. The cops can't keep you safe. This happened in the summer of 2020, when I was working as a night auditor at a small hotel in northern Michigan. The job was quiet for the most part, check in late guests, run some reports, make coffee for the early birds. It was boring, but it paid the bills, and the best part was that most nights I was completely alone in the lobby. The hotel wasn't fancy. 2 floors, maybe 40 rooms total, with a small lobby and a breakfast area. Behind the front desk was a little office with a window facing the parking lot. My shift was from 11 p.m. to 7 a.m., so most of the time, I'd check in the last stragglers and then have the place to myself until sunrise. One night in July, everything felt off. It was a Tuesday, so the hotel was nearly empty, maybe 5 occupied rooms. Around 1 a.m., I was behind the desk scrolling on my phone when I heard something from the hallway, a soft knock. Not on the front door, it was inside, down the corridor where the guest rooms were. I froze, listening, another knock. 3 taps this time, slow and deliberate. I stood up and leaned over the counter, looking down the hall. The lights were on, but I didn't see anyone. The knock stopped, so I sat back down, trying to convince myself it was nothing. Maybe a guest got locked out and was knocking on the wrong door. That happens sometimes. But a few minutes later, I heard it again, this time louder, and this time it was coming from the door behind me. The office door. Here's the thing, the office door stayed locked, always. It led to a narrow storage room and a side exit to the parking lot. I'd checked it earlier that night when I came in, and it was definitely locked. I turned around slowly, staring at the wood panel door. Another knock, this time hard enough to rattle the frame. My first thought was that someone had come in through the side door. But that didn't make sense. The only way in from the outside was with a key card. And the only people who had those were staff. And I was the only one on duty. I grabbed the hotel phone and called the manager. No answer. So I called 911. I told them someone was trying to get into the locked office and that I was alone. The dispatcher told me to stay on the line and that an officer would be there soon. As I'm on the phone, I hear the knock again. Then the sound of the doorknob turning slowly, like someone was trying to open it from the other side. My stomach dropped because that meant there was definitely someone back there, and if the door was locked, then they were trapped in the storage area. How? I had no idea. I told the dispatcher what was happening, and she said, "Stay where you are. Help is on the way." I stayed on the line, eyes locked on that door, until finally red and blue lights flashed through the front windows. 2 officers came in, and I practically jumped over the counter to meet them. I explained everything, still shaking, and they told me to stay in the lobby while they checked the storage room. They opened the office door slowly, guns drawn, and disappeared inside. A minute later, they came back out. "There's nobody in there," one of them said. I thought they were joking. I walked over and sure enough, the storage room was empty. The side door was closed and deadbolted from the inside. No signs of forced entry, no footprints, nothing. The officers looked at each other, then at me and said maybe I was hearing things. "I know what I heard," I told them, but they just shrugged and said to call again if anything else happened. They left. I locked the office door again and sat behind the desk, heart pounding, staring at that door for the next 6 hours. Nothing else happened that night, but the next night it started again. Around 2:15 a.m., the knocking came back. Same door, same slow, deliberate knocks. I didn't call the cops this time because I knew what they'd say. Instead, I grabbed my phone and started recording. I filmed the door while the knocks kept coming. After a minute, they stopped. I played back the video, and the sound was clear as day 3 heavy knocks on a locked door. I thought, finally, proof. The next morning, I showed the video to my manager. She looked disturbed but said there had to be some kind of logical explanation. Maybe pipes, maybe the building settling. I told her pipes don't turn door handles. She didn't have an answer for that. All she said was, if you're too uncomfortable to work nights, we can switch you to mornings. I needed the job, so I stayed on nights. And for about a week, everything was quiet. I almost convinced myself it had been some weird fluke. Until the last night I ever worked there. It was a Sunday, dead quiet. I was sitting at the desk when I heard the sound again, but not knocking this time. It was scraping, like something dragging across wood. I looked at the office door and my blood ran cold. There were deep gouges appearing in the wood. Long, jagged scratches right around the doorknob, like something was clawing at it from the inside. And then I heard a voice, faint, hoarse, right on the other side of the door. It said, asterisk, asterisk, let me out. I didn't hesitate. I grabbed my keys, ran out the front door, and didn't stop until I was in my car with the engine running. I called 911 from the parking lot and told them what happened. They sent officers again. I didn't go back inside, but I watched from my car as they searched the place. After about 15 minutes, one of them came out and told me the same thing as before. Nobody's in there. I quit the next day. I didn't even go back for my last paycheck. A few weeks later, I saw an online post about that hotel. Someone asked if it was haunted because guests kept complaining about noises in the walls. One person said they stayed there recently and heard knocking in the middle of the night from inside the closet of their room. This happened in the winter of 2022. And it's the reason I will never stop for anyone on the side of the road again. I was driving home late from a work trip, about a 4-hour stretch of highway through mostly rural areas. It was snowing lightly, the kind of snow that makes the road feel endless. The clock on my dashboard said 1:47 a.m. My phone had no signal, which wasn't unusual out there. The nearest town was at least 30 miles away. About an hour from home, I saw her. At first, I thought it was a deer or something in the road. My headlights caught this pale figure standing at the edge of the highway, half in the shoulder, half in the snowbank. As I got closer, I realized it was a woman. She was wearing a light jacket knot, nearly enough for the weather, and no hat or gloves. Her hair was wet, hanging in strands over her face. She wasn't waving her arms or trying to flag me down. She was just standing there, perfectly still, like a statue. Every instinct told me not to stop, but something about her made me slow down. Maybe it was guilt. What if she'd crashed her car? What if she was hurt? I pulled over about 20 feet ahead of her and rolled down the passenger side window a crack. "Are you okay?" I called out. She didn't answer. She didn't even move at first. Then slowly she turned her head toward me. Her face was pale, almost gray, and her eyes looked empty, like she wasn't really there. "Do you need help?" I asked again, louder this time. Finally, she started walking toward the car. Not running, not stumbling, just this slow, steady walk. Every hair on the back of my neck stood up. Something about the way she moved felt wrong, like her joints weren't bending the right way. She reached the car and leaned down toward the open window. Her face was inches from mine now, and she smiled. Not a normal smile. It was too wide, too forced, like someone imitating what they thought a smile should look like. "Can you give me a ride?" she asked. Her voice was flat, almost monotone. I hesitated. Everything inside me screamed no, but before I could answer, she reached for the door handle. That's when I realized the lock was still up. I slammed it down and hit the gas, tires spinning on the icy road. The car fishtailed before gripping, and when I looked in the rearview mirror, she was just standing there again. Same spot, same empty stare. I drove until I had bars on my phone and called 911. The dispatcher asked where I was and what happened. I told her everything, that there was a woman out on the highway, dressed wrong for the weather, acting. Weird. She said an officer would check it out, but her tone made it sound like she didn't believe me. About 20 minutes later, my phone rang again. It was the same dispatcher. We had a unit check that area, she said. They didn't find anyone. I didn't sleep when I got home. I kept picturing that smile, those empty eyes. I almost convinced myself I'd hallucinated the whole thing until 3 nights later. I was driving home again from the late shift, same highway, same time of night. And there she was, standing in the exact same spot. This time I didn't slow down. I didn't even look directly at her. I pressed the gas and flew past, hands gripping the wheel so tight they hurt. When I finally got home, I called the police again, voice shaking, and told them she was back. They said they'd send a unit. The next morning, I checked the local news. There was nothing. No missing person report, no stranded driver, nothing. A week later, my friend Eric, who's a deputy in the next county over, called me. He said, "Hey man, you ever see anything weird out on Route 49? My stomach dropped. Why? He hesitated before saying, "We got 3 calls in the last week about a woman out there. All around the same spot you mentioned. Every time we go, she's gone. No footprints in the snow. Nothing." I asked him if he thought it was a prank, and he said, "I don't know, but one of our guys swears he saw her last night." Said she walked toward his cruiser and his dash cam cut out. After that, I started avoiding that stretch of road completely. It added an extra 30 minutes to my commute, but I didn't care. Then about a month later, something happened that still makes me feel sick when I think about it. I got a call from Eric again. His voice was different this time, serious, shaken. "You're not gonna believe this," he said. "We found a car buried under the snow about half a mile from where you saw her. Looks like it slid off the road sometime in December. Was anyone inside?" I asked. "Yeah," he said after a long pause. "A woman. ID says her name was Lauren Pierce. She'd been out there a while." I felt cold all over. "That doesn't make sense," I said. "I saw her." She walked up to my car. Eric didn't say anything for a few seconds. Then he said, quietly, "The coroner thinks she's been dead for at least 6 weeks." If you made it this far, thank you for listening. These stories are a chilling reminder that safety is never guaranteed even when you do everything right. The scariest part? Every single one of these people reached out for help, and still, no one could stop what was coming. If you've ever experienced something similar, something that left you feeling helpless, drop it in the comments. I'd love to hear your stories. And if you want more true horror like this, make sure to like the video, subscribe, and turn on notifications. I've got more coming soon, stories you won't hear anywhere else. Until then, stay safe out there. And remember, sometimes the real horror isn't what's in the dark, it's realizing no one can help you when it finds you.